Let's get this party started. Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our morning presentation today. And kind of excited to see everybody here bright and early. This morning, we're going to be featuring both Becky and Aaron in our presentation. Becky is our curriculum and online learning specialist, and Aaron is one of our tax staffs. Becky and Aaron, do you guys want to say anything, introduce yourselves this morning?
No, just really excited to be here and helping teachers in any way we can during these times.
Aaron?
I ditto that.
Fantastic. So before we get started, just a few reminders. The presentation will be recorded, so if you missed it or you wanna watch it later, it'll be up on our online learning hub. To avoid kickback throughout the presentation, we're going to have everyone muted until the question and answer time at the end. If you do have questions, though, I encourage you to post them in the chat as we go so you don't forget them. And then our presenters will kind of address those once they get through our presentation today. If you don't feel comfortable with your face being recorded, you have the option to turn your camera off. But keep in mind that one of our goals is to build community and human interaction with these little PD sessions. So if you're able to and are comfortable, please leave your camera on so people can see your lovely faces this morning. Today's session will be in a presentation format with a Q&A at the end. The presentation is linked in the chat, so you can follow along if you'd like to. And at the conclusion of the webinar today, we'll send a feedback form in the chat that you can fill out to give us feedback on how we did and just to show that you attended today. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to Becky and Aaron.
All right, good morning, everyone. Today for our Tech du Jour, we're going to feature two apps or websites, and the one that I'm going to be speaking about is Flipgrid, and the other Aaron's going to speak about is Seesaw, because we had some requests yesterday about Seesaw. So we're going to try to keep this short, sweet, and to the point, but please understand that this is just we are skimming the surface with these apps and helping you to just get them started. If anyone has used them in their classroom, please feel free in the chat window to type in your ideas. Again, we are looking to build a community as well, so please feel free to use that chat feature. So Flipgrid, why Flipgrid? Has anyone, raise of hands maybe, has anyone dabbled with Flipgrid? And I know Tara has. Awesome. So Flipgrid is very engaging, especially for the students. I was in a classroom and an elementary room, and they were like, whoa, this is like I'm a YouTuber and I can practice. And I was like, wonderful. Like, if that's what it is, great. But it is very engaging, very interactive for students. The students are able to express their student creativity. They can use stickers, social media, selfies. And so it's a different way for them to be creative. It incorporates some differentiation. So especially for like our special education population, you can do different, time windows. Like you only have 1.5 minutes. You could do for 5 minutes, things like that. Also, it's good for our social emotional learning and building some empathy too. And it allows for student voice. And most importantly, with those ISTE standards, it's creating some digital citizens. The kids are learning. We say that this population they're digital natives, meaning they have grown up with, digital world and they know how to use these tools. But my biggest question is, do they really know how to use these tools educationally? And so one of these goals with Flipgrid is that it creates, some of these digital citizens and those skills. Most importantly, it is free, and they've lifted everything. They've they've partnered with Microsoft. And so now everything is completely free. And that's not just for this pandemic, but forever. Everything's free. You have access to unlimited grids and everything. It is very easy to navigate for the most part. You'll take some time to play around, and I'll show you some of that, but it is easy to navigate. All content areas and all grade levels can use it. I'm not sure, Aaron, your daughter uses it, right? And
My daughter uses it for her, with her orchestra teacher. She sends her like links to it, and then that's how she's uploading her practices right now. And she does like she's super silly on it and sends little messages to her orchestra teacher on there too.
yeah. So the other thing is it provides some pedagogical learning strategies so you can assess prior knowledge. I used it actually in my Spanish classroom for every means of assessment, a lot of speaking assessments, and also reflection. You know, they're reflecting on some goal setting, especially in this time. If your district's using to not do plan instruction and you're doing enrichment and review, this is a great way for students to set goals and reflect. And then you can have these educational conversations with them. And it also promotes metacognition. They are thinking about their own thinking. So some key terms here when you get into Flipgrid. This, what you're looking at is a grid. So a grid refers to the multimedia message board or your community. So for me, it's the different districts that we work with. For you, it might be your class, it might be your subject. So you might have a grid for Spanish just came off my tongue, but math, if you're an elementary teacher, science, social studies, you could have a grid for each student if you wanted, and each student is like their portfolio. You could have, if you're in secondary, you could have a grid for each class. So like period 1, period 2. That's basically just your community. Within your grid is what's called a topic, and that's what each assignment is. So for example, they always have the one that populates is introductions. So within your grid, you would have introductions. You have one grid, so like one class, and then within that class, you can have unlimited topics. So for example, I would have introductions. I might do unit 1, unit 2, unit 3. So those would be referred to as your topics. How do I make a Flipgrid? You create a free account. I always use my Google, and when you talk to your kids about setting up their accounts, I always encourage, if you guys have Google accounts, then the students won't forget. But once they join your grid, and then they never have to rejoin. You're always there. You would then create your grid, aka your community. It is auto-generated, and I'll show you that on they auto-generate a flip code for you, but you can change that to customize it. And then you choose one of the 3 communities. So a lot of teachers always ask me, well, what about privacy? So there's 3 different ways that you can filter this. You can do it where they have to use their school email if they have them. And so then you just add the domain right after it. So for us, it would be at iu17.org. So they can only join your grid if they have that login there. You could upload all the student IDs, which tends to be a lot. And then the last option is that you just make it public. Reasons why I make it public with my students was because we were globally connected with some other schools. We connected with a school in Kenya. So that's why ours was public. It doesn't have to be though, because you can connect it with a co-pilot, which you'll start seeing as you play around with the website or the app. Another reason why we made it public was sometimes we had parents in on the grids. And so parents can also join in and make comments. Students, they'll eventually, I have up there don't need accounts, but eventually they prompt them to make a login. In order to share for your students, all you need to do for your grid is click the share button right there. It's like a little rocket. Or if you want to just share the topic, you would click share right there. The other option, when you click the share, this box will come up, and you can see this is my Lycoming quick link. You can copy that and embed it. If your district's using Reminds, you can embed it with Microsoft Teams. You can embed it with Google Classroom, or you can give that QR code. So you can do all of those things in order to share it. It's very easy for them to get access to it. The other thing I wanted to mention with privacy is you can also set it for your grid or your topic to have a password. So that's another option. am I going backwards? Saying I'm going backwards. There we go. So from the student perspective, what you see, what the students will see is just this dashboard. And so when all they need to do is click the green, well, it's not a green one, but a white plus button, and then it'll ask them to upload their video. They'll record, as you can see this picture right here, they'll record, and then in order to upload it, it needs to go through until it gets to the selfie stage. So they'll record their video, or they have the option to embed a previously made video. So my students like that because they didn't have to record live. They could, you know, they could record it on their own, add some of their own fun things with iMovie, and then they could upload it. The nice thing is that as a teacher, you can make restrictions for how long you want it. So the max is up to 5 minutes. And I think the least is 1.5 minutes. Tara, shake your head is that the least? 1.5 minutes, 30 seconds? I can't remember what the least is. Oh, sorry, you can't unmute. We have you forced mute, but she'll type it in the chat. So as a teacher, you can limit the students for how long they talk, which is nice because some kids will talk forever, and you're also teaching them, how to be concise in that presentation mode. The other thing that's nice for me was it took place in my presentations. While it's amazing and really good practice to have them standing up in front of the class and presenting, when I had a class of 32, it was just impossible for me to do in-class presentations. So this sort of was a nice substitute for that. The other thing is that students can comment on each other. So when they click on the dashboard there with the student picture, their video will pop up. From the teacher's perspective, this is what you would see. It would be a list of your class roster of who has submitted. And you can see this little green, you can see right there, the green bubble, the line over it, around it. That is saying that you have not watched it yet or assessed it. When you click on it to watch it, you can provide feedback. So you can do a rubric. I never played with a rubric with that. I had my own rubrics, but you can provide what I liked, video feedback, so the kids can actually see your face as well, or you can give them comments and email them. So anything else, I'm going to send out these links as well, and you have this presentation so you can make a copy of it and keep it in your drive. But there's a lot of different features as well. There's a new feature with the AR and the VR with Flipgrid, so you can print the QR codes out. There's different things like called Flip Hunt, which you can give, especially for the enrichment and review, which is like a scavenger hunt. And if you guys in the feedback form at the end, if you feel like you would like to dive deeper into some of this, Erin and I are always willing to do a part 2 to this and dive deeper. We do need to feature some other tech tools to help you, but we're always willing to dive deeper. So at this point, I'm going to transition it to Erin and give her sharing permissions. Or Erin, you want to just stop share? If you have any questions, let me know, and you can type them in the chat during our question and answer. But Erin, Seesaw.
All right, good morning. Becky, that was awesome. Thank you. I hope we learned a lot from you for that. I agree with her. I'm just going to give you a very basic understanding of what Seesaw is today. And again, to echo her, if you would like to dive deeper, I'd be happy to do that with you at any point. Seesaw right now has 2 options talking about free and paid. There is a free option that is available all the time. There is also a paid version. And to be honest with you, after using it for quite a while, I don't see a lot of benefits to the paid version. I would encourage you to try the free version and see. I believe everything that you're going to need is probably there. There's not a whole lot of difference with the paid version, except for it can be used as a learning platform. For example, like an LMS system. So your school district, if they buy the paid version, does get a lot more opportunities if they want to upload data or have things to share year to year. Because one thing I found out is, as a 4th grade teacher using it, my teachers going into 5th grade did not have all the content that my 4th graders used. So I would be able to, if I did the paid version, pass that on to the next year's teacher. So that's one thing that they have. So what is Seesaw? It is a learning platform. It's meant to bring together educators, students, and families. And as of right now, we're all kind of, you know, welcoming each other a little bit closer than we are used to. But before that was the case, that was the original intent. So the teachers design and facilitate these powerful learning experiences, and that facilitate is really a key word with Seesaw. You're pushing out some ideas as the teacher, but really it's the students that are creating things. They're reflecting, they're collaborating with each other, they're making their learning visible to you. I know in the elementary grades specifically, we're focused on sometimes a 4-3-2-1 grading scale with proficiency. With Seesaw, it really allows you to understand their learning more than just putting a grade or a number to their understanding. And as though families are very close with their children right now, as we speak, the families can actually actively support and celebrate students' learning as well. So I'll share that with you, how that works. So I kind of went off of the Flipgrid idea. Why Seesaw? One, it is really engaging. We are trying to engage our students. That was one of the focuses of my classroom, and Seesaw is very engaging. It's interactive. The students are interacting with each other. The example I gave the other day when I briefly talked about Seesaw was I would have my students writing pieces of writing to turn into me. And as they turned them into me, I was their only audience. So it didn't give them a lot of motivation to be more creative or to add different things that I was asking them to do. However, when we started implementing Seesaw and it began to, their peers were seeing their writing, some of their family was seeing their writing, and it really encouraged them to ramp up a little bit. Expresses student creativity. I'll show you a few ways that you can allow students to do things that really bring out their strengths. I already mentioned gives a larger audience. It does incorporate differentiation. Jess had asked me about her IEP students and if this would be appropriate for them. And I truly believe that this is a great way to differentiate, just to pull out their understanding of their learning. It does allow for student voice. There is a way for your students to just communicate with you, as well as communicating with their peers. And as Becky talked about, it does create digital citizens. I do encourage you as a teacher, if you're going to implement this, just like anything else this day and age with us doing everything online, to really have those conversations about being a good digital citizen. Because our elementary students, like Rebecca said, they've been born and raised in this digital world. However, sometimes the role models that they're living with don't always show the best way to be a good digital citizen. So having those conversations is really important, especially at the elementary level, on how to give positive feedback, how to be appropriate, all of those things. We touched on this for a second, the mastery of standards. So you can, with the paid version, tag your lessons onto a standard. And I just saw in the chat, this is not necessarily just an elementary app. I think my coworkers are going back to that, but you can use this at all levels. I just haven't had the experience of using it in a fourth grade classroom. So I'm just speaking from my experience. And there was a first grade classroom that I also worked with that used it very well. So why Seesaw? The focus is on mastery of standards. Like I was saying, with the paid version, it will attach a standard to your lessons, but as a teacher, you can certainly do that on your own. But instead of focusing necessarily on putting a number grade to it, we as teachers that facilitate this, we can monitor the students' progress instead of just giving them a number or a letter grade. It kind of gives you the complete picture. It gives you the process and the product, which a lot of times, like Becky was saying, if you have a class of 30 students, being able to get there and see the process from all of them of their learning is hard to do. But using something like Seesaw, it really does show you the process all the way through. It's a powerful way for kids to demonstrate the evidence of their learning over time. It gives you this portfolio of their learning. So especially in a time like this where we're trying to keep everything digital, it's a great way to have this portfolio of their learning where you can go back. Oops. So 3 really steps to using Seesaw, and like Becky said, this is just the start. 3 ways to get started. So you would start by setting up your free account. You could add your students to your class or your classes. So for example, my 4th grade class was departmentalized. So I had 2 sections. So I was able to set up 2 different sections, which I'll show you in a second. So if you were teaching at the high school level or even the middle school level and you had more than one class, there's ability to set up more than one class. And then also Seesaw encourages you to invite family members to view student work, which I know at a time like this, our families are close to each other. So that might be a little bit different, but I still encourage you, because Seesaw is an app that is not just good, like Becky said, for Flipgrid as well, for this pandemic time, but it's also going to be great for you to use next year and the years to come. So how do you set up your free teacher account? This is a video right from the Seesaw website that you can view. We'll try to see if it will cooperate with us here. Oh, hold on. Sorry about that. Let's try again. So I don't know if you noticed on there, but you can import right from Google Classroom. So if you're using that tool as well, you can import your class right from there. You also can log in using your Google account, like Rebecca said, so you don't have to remember more than one. You can log in using your Google account. Here's a quick clip to show how to add your students to your class or your classes.
Erin, is there sound on that video?
Yes, can you not hear it?
No, I'm not sure if.
There's a setting for that, but I wouldn't worry about it. It's embedded in the presentation, so if people want to go back up to the presentation and you can watch it yourself with the sound.
Okay, great.
Rather than trying to figure it out right now. So
okay. So we'll just skip over that for right now. You can do that when you get a chance. So invite family members to view student work. This is that 3rd step. So this is right from the Seesaw website that says we would typically advise you invite family members to view student work at this point in the presentation. However, due to the fact that most family members are already seeing student work, being that they're at home with their kids, you don't have to necessarily invite the family members at this time. Although I don't think it's a bad idea to still doing it, because remote learning now, but hopefully back to classroom use in the future. So this is just to explore Seesaw. I wanted to take you there and see, this is the website here. It would be web.seesaw.me. And you can sign up for free by clicking here. You can also log in, which I just wanted to show you my account really quick. So this is an example of a Seesaw teacher page. As you can see over here, if I go to my name, you can see my 2 classes that I have uploaded, my 2 different sections, the school that I was working on at the time. You can come back to the teacher page and it offers you choices of journal, which is each child's name has their own, and this is just names that I put in here, different journal pages where you can scroll down, and this would be like their portfolio, what they submit to the teacher. Activities, this is all up to you to choose. You can upload your own, or there is a really great library of activities already created with standards attached that teachers can choose from, especially if your district is choosing the enrichment and review option. I would highly encourage you to check out the activities that are already created, because I'm sure there are several of them there for you to tag on to some review of what you've already covered in the content area. This activity is an example of a writing, who is your hero, and it will talk about ways that they can be a detective and find out more about their hero's life. It gives this would be something you would push out to the students, give them directions. One thing I love about Seesaw is it does read it to the students. So I know Jess's question about her students that struggle with reading, it does have an oral reading of instructions for your students, which is great. So you could push that out. There's also a way for an inbox where the students can just communicate with you, as well as family can share announcements with you. So it's kind of similar to the Remind app where your parents can communicate with you. The last thing I wanted to show you was skills. I don't have any tagged right now. However, you could go through and specifically go to your content area and choose the standards that align with it. Let's go back to... The last thing is some resources for this. They will be on the presentation. These are links that you could go in. Seesaw did a really nice job giving a home learning planning guide, which I highly recommend you look into if you plan to use this when you're doing your remote learning. The home planning guide allows you to really think about the things to guide your lessons. What is the standard? What are the learning experiences? It gives you different content areas. It gives you a closing message that you could be linking on there. There's also the other link that I have on here is learning activities by subject and grade. This is awesome for review or reviewing content or that enrichment. You could go through and say you teach first grade and here are an example of like 5 or 6 different lessons that you could go through and assign to your students for that enrichment or their review. So really great resources that Seesaw is making available to our teachers at this time.
Erin, can you upload videos to Seesaw?
You can upload videos to Seesaw as a teacher, yes. I don't know what the restrictions are. I'd have to look at that as far as time goes.
Okay. I think at this time we're going to open it up for questions and comments on both Seesaw and Flipgrid. There's some questions in the chat. You can continue to post there. I'm also, you can now unmute yourself if you'd like to use your microphone. So you, go ahead. Any questions or comments? Erin and Becky can field for both platforms.
Tom asked a question here, Erin, about journal direct entry by individual into Seesaw, or can things be cut and pasted into it? Trying to find ways to get authentic work. I think, Tom, that both of these websites and apps are great ways for authentic work. Erin, do you want to talk about Seesaw with journal direct entry, cut and paste?
Yeah, I mean, students can ultimately cut and paste something and post it as their own into Seesaw because it gives them a way to send things to their teacher. I often, though, times would give them assignments. So it was kind of like a template that I was asking them to follow that was mine. So it was hard for them to go and replicate that online. So I do think that they could copy and paste and post something in, but you're probably going to be able to tell the difference between them, if that makes sense.
I'm going to show, we had a question about co-teaching, and especially with special education. If you're working with a special educator, I'm going to show you with Flipgrid. The other cool thing that I wanted to mention is it counts engagement time. So when we talk about engagement, it's a little silly, but like how they measure engagement, meaning like how many people have stepped into these videos. But if I look at our ITC group here, in order to add a co-teacher, you could manage your co-pilots. And what I can do, for example, these are all my co-pilots. So like Dwight, this is part of our ITC group. What that means then is they would accept this grid and they have then access, the same teacher access that I do, and they can upload and do all of these controls. So what you would do is I would just add, say I would add Scott. They have to all, your co-teacher already has to have an account with Flipgrid. Scott, do you have an account? I don't think you did. Oh, you did. Okay. So I would just add his email and invite him to be a co-pilot. So that is another way that you can use some co-teaching, and then they can also comment back so to them.
Yes, and with Seesaw, the free versus paid, you can have two teachers on one if you are doing the paid version or the free version, excuse me. I'll show you the difference here real quick. So here's Seesaw free and here's the Seesaw paid version. So you can have 2 teachers per class. For the free, you can have up to 20 teachers per class for the paid. You can have 10 classes per teacher. So if you have different periods, you can have up to 10 for free, where if it's a paid version, it's 100. And down towards the bottom of this, and this is on one of the help pages for Seesaw, towards the bottom, it talks about how from grade to grade, you can move those portfolios. That's only with the paid version. Being able to integrate it into your management system, that's also only with the paid version. So.
Any other questions?
All right. We'll stick around for a couple minutes if anybody wants to talk about anything else, but in the chat window, I'm posting just a set of links. The first is the feedback form for today's session, so please take some time to fill that out for us. Gives us feedback and also lets us know that you were here. There's also a suggestion form there, so if you want to suggest future content, if you want to go deeper with one of these tools, please fill out that suggestion form. And it is something, once we have proof that people actually want it, in that way, we will be able to hopefully develop one of those sessions. And then our email addresses are there as well if you want to follow up individually with one of us on the topic that you saw today or any day this past week.
And Scott, what's our afternoon session?
Our afternoon session today is a featured presenter. We have Ed Mentum coming in to talk about Study Island, which we know a lot of our districts use, and they've just recently, I think, opened it up a lot more for districts to be able to use during this time of everybody being out of the schools. So you want to make any more comments on that, Becky?
Yeah, I do want to mention, like, we made sure with the feature presenters that we're hosting, we're not making it very sales pitchy. So it is, how do teachers use this tool moving forward with remote learning? And Scott, what are we doing tomorrow during this time?
Tomorrow morning at 9, we have our coffee and conversation, which we're really excited about because it is an informal time of sharing and just talking about whatever anybody brings to the table. So we encourage you to just show up at 9 o'clock, bring some coffee, bring a few things you're interested in or questions you might have from this past week or anything, and we'll be here for an hour. So if you can't come right at 9, come anytime throughout that hour, and we would love to chat. So.
And we will be adding, we'll let you know, give you a next week preview for our webinar series next week, which has a new special feature. So,
yes.
thanks for hanging out with us today, guys.